All right, and we're back to the Python Institute, and this time lab 2.1.1.20. So page 20 of module 2, group section 1, chapter 1, page 20. And we're continuing along with our print statements. This time we're not just modifying the print statements, but we're formatting the output that we might see. So in this scenario, we have an arrow over here. It's a nice up arrow that is very interesting, kind of. In some websites, they have the up arrow that they use quite a bit for upvoting people. And they have some options for us. So here they are suggesting that we play with the code and literally play. Have fun with the code. There's literally nothing that we can do here that's wrong. Worst case scenario, we have to start from scratch. And so it gives us a couple of suggestions, such as minimize the number of print statements using the \n sequence in the strings. That's interesting. Make the arrow twice as large. Duplicate the arrow using the $2, such as multiply by 2. Remove the quotes, see if there's any errors. Do the same with the parentheses. Change how print works. And replace some of the quotes with apostrophes or single quotes. So we'll see how that works. Now there's going to be a problem specifically with this one lab, because when I run it, you'll notice that the console down here is kind of small and it kind of cuts things off. You can see right there underneath my stars, it starts cutting things off. Well, if we're going to be making this even bigger, that's not going to quite work for what we're doing. So for that, I'm going to pull up another website here, which is called repl.it, and it is just an online Python editor, exactly the same idea as this environment we were just looking at. But as you can see, the output here is a little bit bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. So Control C. Excuse me. Control V, there we go, and run that, and then we'll see that the output should be exactly what we're looking for, except this time it gives us all the output. All right, so the very first suggestion was minimize the number of print functions by inserting the \n sequence into the strings. So we'll start off with that, but I don't necessarily want to edit what's already there. I want to add this in separately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of this, and then I'm going to paste it again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start minimizing the number of print statements with the \n. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select from this quote right here to that quote, and I'm going to hit delete. So I'm deleting the closing quote all the way up to the opening quote on the next line. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in a \n. Now, \n is a new line character. Backslash specifically is referred to as an escape character, and then the n, the escaped n, means new line. So now if I run this, we should see two arrows right on top of each other. The first arrow is this guy up here. Second arrow is this guy down here. And you'll notice even though both of these are on the same line, they are both showing up properly in the output. So since that worked on one line, then I should just simply be able to keep replacing the rest on all the other lines. So again, closing quote to the next opening quote, I'm going to replace with a \n. Same thing here. And we're going to start running out of room here, but that's perfectly fine. All right, and then lastly, the closing quote to the opening quote. You see how it kind of wrapped around there. Might be easier if I scroll that over. You see how the first print line wrapped around. So then delete, \n. Now I'm still leaving this final closing quote to match up with this opening quote. But now when I run this, it should look exactly the same. However, instead of having 8 print statements up there, I now only have the 1. So it helped me minimize the number of print statements in my environment. Let's see, next, make the arrow twice as large but keep the proportions. There's a couple of different ways to be able to do this. Probably the easiest is to simply, let's copy that again and then simply edit it and make it bigger. So that if we want it to be twice the proportions, then instead of 8 lines here, we want 16. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by just copying each line and printing it twice. So now when we run it, we'll see one that is twice as large, but now we want it to be twice as wide, which means pretty much every single space in there needs to be doubled. So I will actually, let's see, how many spaces are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 stars. Same thing there, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And 2 stars. And you can see kind of how I'm going here. And so on and so on. And I won't make you wait and watch what I'm doing, but you can see it is starting to look similar to a star. Forgive me if it looks horrible, but I won't subject you to waiting for me. Next one, duplicate the arrow by placing them side by side with the string star2. All right, well, let's come back up to the start here. Let's copy this guy, paste him down here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply do a multiply by 2 at the end here. And now when I run it, what we see here is it prints out that line, but then it prints it out again. So if I simply do a multiply by 2 for each of these, it's going to repeat what's in the line twice. Ooh, wow, that looked kind of ugly, so maybe we need to do a little bit of cleanup in order to make it look proper. For instance, we may need to add in some additional spaces on the right here so that they all line up. And I'm just looking vertically. That looks about right. So they all line up now with that quote. So we do the same thing down here and then run it. And now we can see we have the two right there side by side. Let's see, remove any of the quotes and look carefully at Python's errors. Well, let's see, let's remove that quote right there just to see what happens. Go ahead and run that. And we see we get an error. Specifically says it's on line 21, which is really interesting because that's actually line, oh, I'm sorry, that was line 21. Yeah, okay. So we put that back in and it works properly. Let's see, change any of the print statements to something else, for instance, with a capital P. Well, that's probably going to be the same thing. So if I remove again on line 21 to a capital P, then it gives us the name print with a capital P is not defined and specifically tells us that's on line 21. So line 21, I see right there, that's a capital P, that should be a lowercase p, and then run it, and that should fix it. Let's see, replace some of the quotes with apostrophes. I am assuming they mean a double quote with a single quote. And as long as I treat them in pairs, there's virtually no difference between a single quote and a double quote. They both come out exactly the same. So there you have it. That is lab 2.1.1.20. Not overly difficult. Probably the hardest part is the fact that this console isn't very big, plus the fact that we are playing with the code, and playing with the code can break it. So let's see, if we broke it, there is a reset button right here. So for instance, if I deleted that quote, and maybe I deleted that quote, it won't work. But if I click this reset button, that will reset me back to square one, so I can continue on from there.